The world has changed forever. As the Ukraine conflict enters its fourth brutal year, the geopolitical landscape has been completely transformed in ways most media outlets refuse to address. Over 1 million military casualties, more than 10 million displaced Ukrainians, infrastructure losses exceeding $349 billion. But behind these staggering numbers lies an even more disturbing reality about who's really benefiting from this tragedy and who's paying the ultimate price. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden winners and losers of a conflict that has rewritten the rules of global power. What you're about to learn may shock you. The United States has emerged as perhaps the biggest beneficiary of this devastating conflict, solidifying its position as the cornerstone of NATO while witnessing unprecedented economic gains. By successfully rallying European allies to support Ukraine, Washington has reversed the transatlantic tensions that defined the previous administration. The conflict has validated American military and diplomatic primacy, with NATO expanding to include Finland and Sweden, a direct consequence of Russian aggression. But the real story lies in America's energy dominance. U.S. liquefied natural gas exports to Europe surged by a staggering 150% in 2023, filling the void left by severed Russian supplies. This energy pivot has not only strengthened American economic leverage but also helped mitigate inflationary pressures at home. Meanwhile, the dollar's global hegemony has been reinforced, allowing the Federal Reserve to export inflation through aggressive monetary policy while European central banks struggle with stagflation. Perhaps most telling is the revival of America's military-industrial complex. Defense contractors like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon have seen record profits, with U.S. military aid to Ukraine exceeding $118 billion. The war has spurred innovation in drone warfare and artillery systems, ensuring long-term technological superiority over adversaries like China. China, too, has emerged as a surprising winner, pursuing opportunistic expansion and gaining strategic leverage. Beijing has become Russia's economic lifeline, purchasing 45% of its discounted oil and gas exports since 2022. This dependency has allowed China to negotiate favorable terms for critical minerals and Arctic shipping routes, positioning itself as a quasi-suzerain over a weakened Moscow. By abstaining from UN condemnations of Russia, China has successfully exploited divisions within Western nations. The EU's fragmented response to sanctions, coupled with Hungary's and Slovakia's pro-Russian tilt, has undermined Brussels' credibility, strengthening Beijing's narrative of Western decline. Turkey has leveraged the conflict to establish itself as a geopolitical mediator and energy hub. By controlling the strategic Bosporus Strait, Ankara has extracted concessions from both NATO and Russia. Turkish authorities have blocked Russian warships while permitting grain shipments, positioning Turkey as an indispensable diplomatic broker. The 2023 Black Sea Grain Initiative, though short-lived, showcased Turkey's growing diplomatic clout. Turkey has also become a critical node for Russian gas rerouted to Europe, skirting EU sanctions via shadow fleets. Domestically, the conflict has accelerated Turkey's defense indigenization, with Bayraktar TB2 drones proving pivotal in Ukrainian counteroffensives, a marketing triumph for Turkish arms exports. Other opportunistic winners include oil-exporting nations like Saudi Arabia and Norway, which have capitalized on inflated energy prices, with Brent crude averaging $98 per barrel in 2024. Countries like Poland and Japan have used the conflict to justify massive military modernization, with Poland's defense budget now exceeding 4% of GDP, the highest in NATO. But for every winner, there are those who have lost profoundly. Ukraine itself has suffered catastrophic losses and faces an uncertain future. Russia currently occupies 20% of Ukrainian territory, including the vital Donbas industrial heartland and Crimea. The population has plummeted from 43 million to just 28 million, with nearly 7 million refugees unlikely to ever return. Male life expectancy has dropped to a shocking 57 years due to combat losses and healthcare system collapse. The economic devastation is equally severe. Ukraine's GDP contracted by 35% in 2022, with inflation peaking at 26% in 2023. Reconstruction costs are estimated at an astronomical $1 trillion, yet Western aid fatigue and corruption scandals have stalled recovery efforts. The Ukrainian currency's 27% devaluation since 2022 has crippled import capacity, exacerbating food and medicine shortages. Politically, President Zelensky's approval ratings have halved to just 32%, with allegations of authoritarianism and failed counteroffensives eroding public trust. The Trump administration's unilateral peace talks with Moscow have effectively sidelined Kyiv, signaling a dwindling Western commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty. Russia itself, despite its territorial gains, emerges as a long-term loser facing irreversible decline. Its military reputation lies in tatters, with documented losses including over 2,800 tanks, 48 advanced bombers, and 20% of its pre-war personnel. Moscow's reliance on North Korean artillery and Iranian drones underscores its technological obsolescence. Economically, sanctions have cost Russia $400 billion in frozen assets and severed access to the SWIFT banking system. While GDP grew 5.6% in 2024 due to wartime production, civilian sectors like automotive manufacturing and technology have collapsed. Brain drain has intensified, with 800,000 professionals fleeing the country since 2022. Strategically, Russia now faces encirclement, with NATO expanding along its borders, while its own collective security treaty organization falls into dysfunction. Central Asian states that once looked to Moscow for protection now prioritize Chinese patronage, while Armenia actively seeks European Union integration. The European Union, too, counts among the conflict's major losers. Energy insecurity has triggered widespread deindustrialization across the continent. The EU's reliance on Russian gas dropped from 40% to just 9%, but at enormous cost. German industrial electricity prices tripled, forcing 15% of manufacturers to relocate operations outside Europe. France's nuclear fleet, plagued by maintenance issues, failed to offset energy deficits. Political fractures within the EU have widened dangerously. Hungary's obstruction of aid packages and Poland's unilateralism have exposed institutional paralysis in Brussels. Far-right parties capitalizing on inflation and refugee inflows now govern in Italy and Sweden, further undermining European unity. Perhaps the most overlooked casualties are nations in the global south, which have suffered severe collateral damage. Ukraine's grain exports fell by 75%, causing global wheat prices to spike to $480 per ton in 2023. Egypt, Pakistan, and Lebanon faced bread riots, while Sri Lanka defaulted on $51 billion in debt. The West's perceived double standards, condemning Russian aggression while ignoring other conflicts, have eroded soft power and accelerated BRICS expansion as global South nations seek alternatives to Western-dominated institutions. The Ukraine conflict has fundamentally accelerated the decline of the post-Cold War order. While the United States and China consolidate their power, middle powers like Turkey and India navigate an increasingly fragmented landscape. For Europe, the war serves as a wake-up call to address energy vulnerability and defense fragmentation. Ukraine's best-case scenario, a partitioned state dependent on Western aid, pales in comparison to the human cost already paid. Russia faces long-term decay as a petro-vassal to Beijing, but the true losers remain the millions of people displaced, traumatized, or killed in a war that has redefined 21st century geopolitics and created ripple effects that will be felt for generations. If you found this analysis valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth coverage of global conflicts and their hidden consequences. We're committed to bringing you the perspectives mainstream media often overlooks. Hit that notification bell to stay informed about our latest uploads. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.